Wow. What's up, guys? How we doing today? Oh my god. Oh my goodness. You doing a Twitter space today? Almost certainly not. But it'd be fun. It'd be Mimi. Be pretty wacky. Be pretty crazy if we did, huh?
Send every lawyer letter you want. You will never take us to court. You will never take us to court because you, A, understand that you'll get into discovery with you and your campaign, and that will be a wreck for you. That will be a show for you that will never end. We will get in, Donald, and I will tell you.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you for having like the base level understanding of how these cases work. I can't believe people online are so scared by cease and desist letters. My God. True.
I'll tell you this very clearly. If you sue us, we'll bring you into discovery and we'll start talking about where all the money goes in the Trump campaign. Because you and I both know, Donald, that you people are skimming off enormous percentages of the cash from your campaign. We know it. You know it. There are all those crazy LLCs, those mysterious Wyoming registered LLCs that are housed in Delaware behind 27 layers of obscurity. We know where they are, Donald. We know who they are. We know what you're doing. You're never going to sue us. You're never going to sue us. You are, in fact, as I pointed out in a previous video to you, Donald Trump, a pussy-ass bitch. You will never sue us. If you try, it will be fantastic because America will know what's underneath the rotten, stinking, filthy hood of your campaign. You will never get away with it. And I will tell you this very clearly. I personally have already been sued by your minion, Mike Flynn. Okay? I don't care. I'm going to fight it and I'm going to win it. You can sue us if you want, but believe me, it will go so badly for you. We will get into everything. We will get into everything, Donald. We will get into the settlements your campaigns had to pay for sexual harassment lawsuits. We will get into the money. We will get into every single part of your crapulous enterprise. Everything will come public.
Everything.
We're not afraid of you, Donald.
Come public. Like, never mind. Where is Pisco at? Destiny, I have a question. Hello, Jet King. I have the answers. I'm sorry, but this is the most cringe fucking thing I have ever seen in my life. And let me be fair, if anybody on my side was talking about Biden or Kamala Harris or whatever this way, I would also make fun of you for being weird and insane. This is insane.
Corey's firefighter gear was displayed at the Republican National Convention, which was a special honor.
That was an honor. That was a big honor. Yeah, that was a big honor. I'll tell you why. All day at the rally, my husband kept saying, he's going to call me up on stage. You're going to hear him. He's going to say, Corey, come on up here. Corey, get up here. He was just joking, you know, obviously, but he kept saying that. You're going to get up. You know, he's going to call me up on stage. And we were all like, there's his moment. He's up on stage. So, yeah, he got his moment on stage.
Corey's firefighter.
My God. Just as a reminder, and I will play the conspiracy side on this because conservatives do it all the time. I think it's a legitimate question, okay? I hear over and over again that this guy died protecting his family. There are 4 million cell phones in this audience. There is not a single piece of footage of this happening. The only footage I've ever seen of this guy getting shot, it's him down here. The only footage I've ever seen is shots happening, everybody else getting down while he stays standing to record the shooting. Okay?
What happened?
Everybody else goes down, and he stays standing to keep recording. Watch. Not moving it, not even flinching.
Go down.
And then, watch right here, watch right here, watch right here.
Whoa!
There goes his hat as he gets shot on the second barrage. I don't believe it. I don't believe it that this guy died protecting his family, that this guy jumped on his family. I think that this guy stayed standing the whole time recording with his phone, and then he got hit by the second barrage. I don't believe anything else until I see better video footage of it. His hat goes flying when he jumps to shield his family. Anyway, how are we doing today, guys? Wow. I disagree with Destiny on Russia. TLDR, I think Destiny reminded me with overestimate the potential to unite Russian population and communist. Okay. Based. What is this? Hold on. Don't care about this. Okay. Will there be a second focus group? Yes. It's going to be with all of your moms. Trump going for 4 years and then 4 more years since Kamala spied on their campaign, so they deserve another 4 years. No. Trump forever, though. Based. I have Pisco questions about term limits, though. Who posted this? Why did you post this as fucking images? Why would you not just post the PDF? Oh, I forgot it's Reddit. You can't post. Okay, hold on. Wait. Oh, wait. Jesus. Supreme Court of the State of New York, County of Kings. Now, in New York, they name their courts different weird things. I don't know why, but the Supreme Court is not the highest court in New York. I believe that in New York State, their highest court is called the Court of Appeals. I don't know why. That's just how they do it. You're hereby summoned to answer the complaint in this action and to serve a copy of your answer, or the complaint is not served with a summons, to serve a notice of appearance on the plaintiff's attorney within 20 days. Okay. The basis of venue is that both parties reside or are based in Kings County, and the acts complained of took place here. So we have a complaint by Norman D. Finkelstein versus Nicholas Keller, Nate Gauthier, and Stephen Wallace. Wait, what the fuck? Hold on. I hate this fucking website now. My God. Hold on. Plaintiff Dr. Norman. Hello.
How you doing?
Doing great. Wait, okay, I have a question.
Yeah.
I don't see any place in the 22nd Amendment for how this is supposed to be enforced. Do you think there's any chance that that would happen?
That what would happen? That a person would be elected to a third term?
That it would just get tossed by the Supreme Court on similar-ish rationale as the Section 3? Because I don't, what is it? No person shall be elected. What the fuck does that mean? That wasn't enough before, right?
Yeah. I mean, that's one of the reasons why I think Anderson was so poorly decided, is that it didn't rely on this kind of ministerial versus substantive distinction, or like procedural versus non-procedural distinction. It just simply said that states are like structurally, it doesn't make sense for them to be able to enforce Section 3, but didn't explain how therefore they could like enforce their own. Like you just saw that like, who was running on the green ticket? Oh my God, was it West? Cornel West?
Maybe
he like got kicked out of off the ballot in Michigan. So like, why can states enforce their own rules? Why can they enforce other parts of the Constitution?
Or they can enforce, states can enforce Section 3, just not on federal candidates. How does that make sense?
Candidates,
what?
Right? So
Yeah.
that's what I think. Anderson and 9 justices, every single justice.
It's incoherent. It's like
it's incoherent.
Yeah.
Here's how, if I'm being good faith, the court might sort of
Save this, salvage this.
So notice in the 22nd Amendment, there's no
fifth clause where it says Congress can pass that. Yeah.
And you can be like, well, this wasn't passed in the Civil War. This was passed afterwards. So the same kind of fears about states enforcing them aren't present with respect to Section 3.
I understand what you're saying. I think it's all kind of weird.
It's pretty funky.
This is something I've been saying. Okay, maybe I'm incorrect, but you can tell me. And the Constitution is the Constitution of the United States plus all the amendments. It's not like there's the Constitution and the amendments. When the Constitution is amended, it's part of the Constitution, right?
Yeah.
The reading of law is supposed to do. It's supposed to go you check the text. And then there's a contradiction. You pick the newest text, right? So let's say the First Amendment said there's slavery, and then they made a Second Amendment saying no slavery. Well, you would go with the newer text, right?
Yeah,
but
later in time.
Yeah, but if there's no contradiction, and if the reading of the text is plain and clear, then kick rocks. It doesn't matter at that point, right? This is my understanding. Okay, I guess what I don't understand is that I believe, I'd have to go back and check, but the text of the Constitution, I think, is similar to the 14th and 22nd Amendment in so far as like qualifications for president, right? The president shall be, they say it shall be, yeah. So I'm trying to imagine like the president shall not be whatever insurrection law. Like if it was put right next to the other qualifications, the idea that one needs, it's just so incoherent. The fact that Congress needs to pass it to enforce it on the federal level, but the states could enforce it if they want on their own state level. It makes
no sense. And I think Anderson is one of the worst opinions ever made, because I think it just whiffs on basic structure of the Constitution and qualifications. And remember, the majority, or I should say the per curiam opinion, doesn't even address how you're going to enforce the other qualifications. Go ahead. Sorry, I didn't know if you had
No, I was saying, go ahead.
One other thing to note, read Section 1. No person shall be elected to the office of the president more than twice.
Yeah.
And no other person shall, be elected president. So those of you who read closely,
What if you're
this is not a qualification for to assume the office. It's a qualification for
elected.
election.
So does that mean that after Trump finishes this term, let's say him and Vance do it up, could the next term, could Vance run with Trump as the vice president and then?
This has never been tested, right? But I think the best reading of this clause, because it'll say things in other parts that nobody shall be the president unless 35, where they'll use different language to like, you cannot assume the office. This literally goes out of its way to say elected. And so I think the best reading, again, this has not been tested, but the best reading of this is, yeah, you can't be elected, but I wasn't elected president. I assumed the office because I was the vice president. That's
the more I revisit, is there any conservative that you would recommend that gives a good steelman reading for the immunity case? I was talking about this privately with another person recently. I truly cannot wrap my brain around the thing that bothers me the most. The thing that is just driving me insane about the case is how easily Roberts jumps from, well, he has civil immunity, so he should probably have criminal as well, obviously, and then like that's it. I don't is there any legal steelman from like an actual conservative person that's actually read it, or
I haven't heard one that I found convincing. That said, here's the issue that I think is the toughest to deal with for those who are like against this immunity decision is read the OLC opinions. There's two, one from the Nixon era, one from I think right before Clinton or right before Bush or something, 2002 or something. And the OLC memos about whether or not you can indict a sitting president.
Okay.
And so explain to me, I guess I would, if I were like questioning you or like attacking you or whatever, I'd be like, why, Stephen, where in the Constitution does it say you're not allowed to indict a sitting president? You have immunity while you're the president? Where's that? But everyone seems to agree, at least in the you don't have to agree to this. By the way, you don't feel the need to just agree with this. But the Justice Department's long-standing policy has been, and opinion has been, the OLC has said, you cannot indict a sitting president.
What was their rationale for that?
Basically that it would be incompatible with the structure of the Constitution, that it would make it impossible for the executive to be the executive. But that's kind of, even though it's, go ahead, sir.
Even if I were to grant that, and without having read the memo, so very carefully, I would say that like I can see the argument, right? Because the executive of the United States, as per one of those Federalist Papers I read, was supposed to be essentially one man who could act with authority, with energy and vigor, right? So it would make sense that you wouldn't want your own DOJ like indicting you over and over again. That would be really fucking weird. But one that feels like a check that the executive has, or a lack of check, I guess the executive has kind of like placed on itself. I think here's something that has like happened a lot in my mind recently. And you can tell me if it is a bad path I'm wandering around. When I thought of the courts, in my mind, I think of the court as like everybody involved in the court process, like the prosecutor and the judge are one and the same. But I think they're actually two very, very, very different, completely like fundamentally different things. That like one is the execution and one is the judiciary, and they're not at all the same.
I would agree with that.
Yeah. So when I think of like whether or not the DOJ can indict a sitting president, that's to me that comes off as a fundamentally different question than saying that like that's different than saying that a judge could never even review a thing, you know?
Yeah. I agree with you that it's different. I think that you have to have a special rationale to find a former president does not have the immunity. But just to be clear, I think that that's one of the harder arguments to deal with. I think you should read that opinion. It's actually fascinating. And then the other one is we do have Fitzgerald. Now, you make a kind of policy argument for why Fitzgerald.
Well, yeah, I think it's two-pronged. There's a practicality argument where, holy Christ, anybody can bring a civil suit, and Jesus, the president could theoretically injure every federal employee based on it. So I can understand that as a matter of like utility, like that would just be nonsense. But I also think, and this is something that I don't think Roberts ever touches in his opinion, I think there is a meaningful difference in the public's investment in seeing civil litigation, process versus criminal litigation. Like we have a huge public interest in prosecuting crimes. It's a lot different for civil stuff.
I hear you.
Yeah, go ahead.
But the question is like, what's the analysis there? Yes,
the analysis is that like somebody being immune from like civil stuff is like, is he above the law or whatever? I mean, like, it's civil stuff. It's to be sued. It doesn't mean he can go out and kill somebody. And I think in Fitzgerald, I think they even make that point. I think they even say, like, obviously this protection wouldn't apply to criminal law, right? Like, the idea that the president could operate in such a way that you can't sue him is a lot different than the idea that the president can act in such a way that he can't be held criminally liable. Because I can imagine a president might have to do things that could theoretically open a man up to a lot of civil liability. I can't imagine a president doing something that would leave him open to criminal liability. I just can't imagine that, right? Like, I feel like when you talk about like committing a crime, right, your act and your mind, your actus and your reus and your mens rea, like the act of Obama going to the OLC would undermine would undermine so much about a criminal charge, right? This is a man who wanted to commit the crime of murder. Why the fuck did he go and talk to the OLC first to see if it was legally okay? That doesn't make any sense, right? So I think there is a huge difference between crime, like criminal statute, versus tort or civil.
I can grant you that there's a difference there, but why is Fitzgerald rightly decided? If the analysis there is it would encumber the office, to have him be whatever, right? That's kind of a similar analysis here, and you're just saying. So, hold
on. I will say, one qualifying, right? Encumbered is misleading. I think that it would needlessly encumber the office. I think we all agree that there are some forms of encumberment that can be good. I don't ever want the president of the United States to stop and think, fuck, am I going to get sued if I make this decision for my country? Fuck no. You make the decision you think is necessary. But I think I would want a president saying, would I be committing a crime if I did this? I think that is good. I think that form of encumberment is super good. Okay,
realize what you just did, right? And it's okay. You don't have to come up with an answer right now because you haven't gone to law school and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Well, essentially what you did was you said, well, I don't disagree necessarily with, even though there is no historical point where this is discussed, there's no Federalist paper on point, there is no text on point. I don't have a problem with Robert's analysis. He just ran it incorrectly. I am okay with Fitzgerald because I do think that there's less of a the kind of structure of what he's saying about it, this being an imposition on the president and him not being able to act with the correct amount of vigor. So that's all fine.
Yeah.
He just ran the analysis wrong. Now, that's one approach you could take, or you could take a different approach, which is like, Fitzgerald was wrongly decided. This is a bad case. It shouldn't be extended. And if they want an immunity for civil stuff, Congress has to pass a law. That's another approach you could take. But if you accept Fitzgerald on its own terms, you're kind of accepting, even though they're different, you're accepting kind of the frame of the analysis that, hey, some certain things are too far into the president's role or office, and if there's not a good enough reason, or if there is a good enough reason, it's not allowed. Do you understand what I'm saying?
Yeah, a little bit. Yeah. To rephrase, the Fitzgerald immunity was done on a breathing document, a living bench, they said what?
A living document. Constitution, like
like they legislated from the bench that there's nothing in the Constitution about that. And if I agree with that decision, then for Roberts, if I was to attack Roberts, I couldn't attack it on a merely unconstitutional basis because the constitutional sourcing for Roberts' opinion is the same as the opinion in Fitzgerald, basically. Sure, yeah. And I think if I was hitting it on it more on that point, I would agree. And maybe if I did dig into Fitzgerald, maybe I would think like, fuck, maybe they should have actually just passed a law in Congress here. I don't like that. And it's already a problem in society. Would you agree that if I had to guess, less than 5% of Americans would even be able to describe the difference between like a civil suit versus a criminal suit?
Less than 5%?
Yeah, I would guess that.
I think it'd be more than that. I think it'd be like 29%.
Okay,
yeah.
My guess would be 5 to 10%. I don't know how many lawyers and people that have been sued there are, but that'd be my guess. Literally 5. So like the conflating of the two even more. Like I think that I could agree with Robert's opinion if there was more procedural similarities between criminal cases and civil cases. But like the fact that you need a grand jury, the fact that you have to prove beyond a reasonable doubt, the fact that there is there's such a difference in approach between like what the state has to do in conducting a case versus like a civil case, who can even bring charges. I feel like all of these things are so meaningfully different that they demand a different analysis. Like I think like I could concede that there could be a world where Roberts engages in that analysis. And I think it's a horrible decision, but it's one like a Chevron where I'm like, I don't know if I agree with this, but reasonable minds, I think, could differ here. But on the immunity thing, the way that he argued it, I just don't think that that's a reasonable minds thing. I think it's a delusional. I think it's an insane take, without more being there. But
I'm stress testing you right now just because you
sure,
asked.
Yeah, no, I understand. Yeah.
I actually haven't seen an argument in favor of this opinion that I have at all found convincing, and I kind of agree with you that like if you don't have to extend Fitzgerald beyond where it is, and taken on its own terms, it makes no sense to just to calculate the cost without calculating the potential benefit or the need for the public interest. I think that makes no sense. And then going even further, I think the way he did it, again, is bullshit. And how this evidentiary rule that's not present in the Amy Coney Barrett example, where it's like impossible to prove bribery, all that stuff is not needed for this analysis. And so on that, I totally agree with you. And I don't even know if Fitzgerald, like let's say you sued the president in his personal capacity, and in order to prove some element of that civil suit, could you go during his presidency to prove like something, some state of affair?
You absolutely couldn't, right?
Right, like
because I was part of Robert saying, well, that would defeat the whole purpose.
Right. So that's troubling. That's really troubling. And I think that sometimes there are principles in conflict. Sometimes you legitimately have a principle in conflict where like you have to trade off the First Amendment versus some other principle. So maybe there is some like strong principle of making sure the executive is vigorous, but you're putting that up against whether the president is a king, or you're putting it up against whether the president, the society can have an interest in
the president not committing crimes.
Yeah, the president not committing crimes. And so I don't like to, these values aren't always hermetically sealed. And sometimes you need to come to like a rational decision if there's two kind of like
conflicting. And I can appreciate that there are some decisions that might be really challenging. Like I think that I do feel, regardless of, I'm not sure how strongly you feel about it, but for Chevron, like I do feel there are very good arguments on both sides of that. Like I feel personally, okay, with a little bit of, I didn't take business law or anything, but like
on the original Chevron, I'll say yes on the original Chevron. I don't think there's good arguments on the stare decisis, but I agree with you. It's a presumption about what Congress intended.
Sure,
and I do think it's, reasonable.
Yeah, I think it feels like reasonable minds can disagree here. I just don't. It looks like on the Roberts thing, the only weight that is given is to the vigor of the executive. And there's absolutely no credence paid to the idea that maybe the public doesn't want a president that can commit crimes. That's not addressed ever. And even I don't understand it. It looked like an AJW argument when Roberts is like, well, for the pardon thing, you could prove it because maybe a record of the pardon would be somewhere in the public record. Like maybe I'm just retarded. What the fuck does that even mean?
So imagine that I accept money from you.
Yeah.
Okay. You can obviously go after me for that. And
well,
there's,
I don't know. Actually, I'm not even sure if you could. It's not illegal to give me money.
Right. But like what I understand, what I mean to say is like that act of me getting money from a private citizen, that is not immunized. And so you could look into that. That could be a source of liability potentially. Fair?
I don't know. What could you look into it for? Because you need at least probable cause to begin an investigation.
Let's assume it's like campaign finance violation. I, in my capacity, not as president, but as running for office, as candidate, you give me $1 billion. Okay. And that's a clear violation.
Yeah, for sure.
Okay. That exchange of money isn't immunized. Fair? I'm trying to walk through what Robert's thing. So for a bribery situation, let's say that I give you $1 billion and I say in a private communication between you and me, I say, hey, I really want you to do a corrupt thing. I want you to corruptly
pardon somebody is what I'm thinking of, the pardon. Yeah.
Right. Yeah. And I give the $1 billion over and then I go and pardon someone. Just the accepting of money for doing the pardon, you would agree that that's bribery, even if I don't end up doing the pardon. Fair?
I actually don't know. Fuck, I'm sorry. I'm not trying to be argumentative. I don't know. If somebody, let's say somebody says, I'll give you $500,000 to do an illegal act, and then you accept the money to do the act, but then you have no intention of doing it. Is that illegal? I'm not sure. I just don't know the answer to that.
So you are a public official. you accept something of value in return for being influenced in the performance of an official act.
Okay.
And so if you go look up 18 USC 201,
Okay.
that's bribery. Bribery of public officials and witnesses.
Okay.
And go to sub B sub 2.
Okay. Being a public official or person selected to be a public official, directly or indirectly, corruptly demands, seeks, receives, accepts, or agrees to receive or accept anything of value personally or for any other person in return for being influenced in the performance of any official act, being influenced to commit or aid in committing or to collude in or allow any fraud or make opportunity for the commission of any fraud, being induced to do or omit to do any act in violation of the duty, such as but I feel like wouldn't a pardon be like subsection A here, 2A, but you can't look at that?
Well, the what's being sort of touched is anyone who accepts or agrees to accept anything of value personally for any other person in return for. So the bribery is the acceptance or the agreement to accept. I'm giving you Robert's theory, right?
Sure, okay. In return for being influenced in the I'm curious if you need to perform the act or not, but okay, yeah, go ahead, okay. The thing that confused me is Roberts' text and his annotation. He said that there could be a public record of the act, so you could.
Yeah, we're getting there.
Yeah. Okay. Yeah. Go for it. Okay, but you're walking me through. Okay. Yeah, okay.
Yeah.
So sure. Let's say that he accepts it in exchange for a corrupt act. Okay. For something like this. Okay.
Arguably, even in that moment, you've done bribery already. I've accepted the money. So like the police could come in, right? Let's say that I get a bunch of gold bars, and let's say even my intention is to. My intention is to, in the future, do this pardon, but just like not immediately.
Sure.
I think that you can make a good case that the bribery's already occurred. I've already accepted corruptly the thing to do the thing.
Okay.
And so automatically, I think that most people might agree, or reasonable people would agree, not every single bribery is covered by this immunity doctrine. Okay.
Perhaps,
if it's really so blatant, right?
Sure.
Here's the problem. One really, really good evidence. First of all,
yeah, I was just gonna get where you're going, because to prove this, right, criminal, right, we have to prove that they had the intent to do the act, and oftentimes in bribery, you don't really get the person like being as explicit.
I'm doing this to do this.
Exactly, and
right?
and what I'm thinking of is for to be fair, these are like JCS videos and stuff. But when they're trying to criminally nail somebody on trying to say, I'm thinking of like a case, and I think there have been a few of these where like a woman wants to pay somebody to kill the husband. I at least in the videos I've seen, maybe these are exceptional, so it's not the norm. It's not enough to just have the woman say like, oh, okay, well, I'll pay you this money to kill my husband or whatever, and then boom, we're arresting you. It seems like usually they want to walk them through a lot more than that, so that my guess is that when they go to court, they have so many statements. They go, look, you absolutely wanted to do this. It wasn't a joke. You were fully intending it. He followed through on it. You were still okay with it. But then I wonder how much harder would it be to prove it with just that first thing, right? Where it's like, oh, well,
like, remember, everyone needs to remember the Trump documents case where he's like, this is classified. This is da-da-da-da-da-da. Like all those pieces of evidence where people are still like, hey, he could have been joking. Like he could have been referencing some newspaper article.
Sure.
He could have been this or that. Right? So like all of these questions about whether or not he actually intended to do something corrupt or all that stuff would arise. And it's the rare case that you'd have like someone say, I'm corruptly doing this so you to do that. Like, and maybe if you wanted to do some, I'm not telling you should do this, but people who are interested, maybe look into the indictments of Senator, oh my God, Menendez.
Okay.
The convictions there. Or there are some pretty bad messages there, I believe. But imagine that all we have are like him having these conversations where he's having kind of suspicious conversations. We have the gold bars. We have him doing things out of his way for these, I don't know, Egyptian officials or whatever. The best piece of evidence that you could have that he's like corruptly using his office is like him communicating to his staff, hey, I want to bring up a pardon. And the staff saying like, yeah, I thought it was weird because we didn't even know this person. And maybe the fact that he completed the act referenced in, whatever went along with the gold bars. Maybe that's really the killer piece of evidence that will nail a president for bribery. And so you can imagine probably the best evidence that you can get in any kind of real situation of the president doing bribe are these kinds of wink, wink, nudge, nudge, and then the bribe itself. Now, what is Roberts referring to as the public act of the pardon? You could maybe point to the fact that there is a newspaper article, or it is in fact the case that a pardon took place on this date. But you couldn't really peer back into this is where maybe I'm not understanding fully, and maybe it is incomprehensible. You're not supposed to look into the motive behind that pardon itself.
Sure, but you also can't question the act itself. So I don't know why the public record would be different than direct testimony. Because then to offer this up, because I'm curious how would Roberts, or how do you think he would respond? You say like, oh, okay, I understand what you're saying. I agree. So I can't go and like, get testimony from somebody around the president to say that like the act has occurred. It has to be part of the public record. Okay, well, fine. Why then did you bucket the potential firing of the attorney general as being a absolutely immune act? Wouldn't an attorney general being fired or hired, wouldn't that be like in a news media article somewhere? Wouldn't that be in a public statement somewhere? Why wouldn't that be part of the public record? One of Amy's like best lines, I think, in her concurrence in part is saying, I don't understand why Roberts would go out of his way to bracket off an absolutely immune act, but not go out of his way to bracket off any absolutely not immune acts, any unofficial acts. And she brings up his conversation with Raffensperger is absolutely not an official act as the president of the United States. If he's going to engage in some of it, why engage in any of it? Especially, and this, and I was talking to somebody else because this also really bothered me. Roberts, if we accept his ruling was fine, which is insane, but if we accept all of it, then in my opinion, as a retard, okay, all of the behavior should have been remanded back to the lower courts for this new analysis. Because we can conceive of a world, right, where if the lower court knows that we've got some absolute immunity around some of this AG stuff, then we might approach it in a way different way. The whole theory of the case could change, or at the very least, the structuring of that part and how we talk about it might change significantly. But now that Roberts has already bracketed off, you've robbed the lower court of even engaging in that sort of construction, in that kind of analysis, or construction or theory, whatever. You've taken that away from them. And if you weren't going to make anything like, okay, you could definitely like bring this up, why would you say you definitely can't bring this other thing up while remanding everything else back to the lower court for analysis? I feel like that was really dirty and really disgusting.
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that would be the normal thing to just put it back. But what they're saying is that no matter how you try to construe the communications with the DOJ, I mean, it doesn't really make sense because unless you're accepting our vision of what they're saying, which is essentially any communication with the DOJ, about with like a tangential relationship to a certain topic is immunized, and I think that is the best reading of the. Sure,
but then if that's the best reading, then it stands. He doesn't need to make an actual like factual declaration about the lower, which is something that I think that I was gonna say generally the Supreme Court wouldn't even normally do that, right? Is like do a factual analysis or whatever. Although I guess technically it's a legal analysis, but it just seems really inappropriate to do that on that thing instead of just remanding all of it and seeing how the lower courts decide to present it. Because we can imagine a different way that information could be presented, where maybe they present that without ever talking about hiring and firing somebody. Maybe they only want to talk about the, a threat or a breach of policy in the DOJ. Maybe they want to go a totally different route, but now that's kind of been taken from them.
It has. I hate this opinion a lot. Yeah. And actually, the more I think about what I just said about bribery, I don't understand the notion that, like, if you can't look into the motive behind why a president did a certain pardon, I don't actually understand why it would make sense to bring it up.
Yeah, it just seems so difficult. Yeah, you can't. Yeah, and even like this is the dumbest reading, but it seems, in my opinion, it seems to be accurate. I don't understand why you can't just go to every single cabinet official and say, "Hey, I need you to rape this woman, or I'm going to fire you." Like, I don't understand why that wouldn't be just unquestionable, because and all the conservatives always say, well, rape, like the president can't tell people to rape people, and it's like, well, no, but if he makes their hiring or firing conditional upon that, then why not? Because it seems like in the DOJ, the president was able to pressure them to send out a letter about something that didn't exist, right? Because Roberts makes it sound, and this is another thing I don't like about Roberts is his opinion. Roberts makes it sound like when he's writing this legal analysis, he's saying, even if the indictment were true, this would still be bucketed away.
Yes.
Yeah, but if the indictment is true, the issue has nothing to do with Donald Trump asking his DOJ to investigate or not investigate anything. That wasn't the behavior at all. In fact, I don't think he's ever been accused of a crime for asking the DOJ to look for voter fraud. It was for demanding they send out a letter that wasn't true. That's not any part of the president's job or the DOJ's job whatsoever. So why would this even qualify? But because it was attached to the hiring or firing of Rosen or Donahue, now it's become immune. How does that make? Yeah.
Well, just to be fair to Roberts, there are more things that they want to look into, like the president's insistence that there is voter fraud. Like all this gets into the mens rea and his intent and his knowledge that like it wasn't true. And so him discussing with his DOJ the results of investigations. What actions they're going to take. That is kind of even. I understand the most the most fiery testimony evidence is him the fake letter stuff, and that is also immunized. So I take your point, but I'm just being in fairness to Roberts. Yeah, I mean, I agree with you. And if all it takes, by the way,
well, but then also, hold on, because I just want to fight on there because it's like this is almost like talking about like conspiracy, right? Where like we can both come up with a conspiracy to murder somebody that involves 10 acts, and 9 of those acts can be perfectly and totally legal acts, right? You and I get together, we go to a store, we buy a gun, we do some target practice where we have this guy's hung up as a target, we go to a rally, and then we find him, and then we shoot and kill him, and that last thing is the only illegal part. But so, I mean, every single step towards it was part of the conspiracy to kill. Like, yeah, it just seems weird to make it unquote, yeah.
And honestly, I encourage any conservative law tuber, law person to come on and discuss the following with us, because I'm about to say something that I think gets into your analogy a little bit, and it gets into the SEAL Team 6 memes a lot. And you should, if you ever walk down this path, it's always the same thing, which is people will say, "But that's illegal." How
exactly.
It's illegal. But here's what I'm going to say.
Yeah.
Even if you don't accept Stephen's hypothetical on its own terms, you should though. Where he's just he's asking someone to do anything with the threat that
they'll be fired.
Will be fired. Put that aside. Imagine that they did the same thing, but you give some kind of purported prima facie rationale where you say this unspeakable act is the only way we're going to get the information we need for our DOJ investigation, or unless we do this, you're not going to be not motivated enough to complete that EPA report, or unless you do this heinous act, if you can tie it some way in a prima facie way or some kind of like facial way to an official duty of that branch, I don't know that you need to, but suppose you write it in a memo, I don't know why that wouldn't be immunized.
And there's a huge layman's issue that is actually drives me crazy, and Sean fell into this trap. We didn't even get to this, but Sean had a huge problem with Kamala Harris tweeting once about that Minnesota fund or whatever for bail. He had a really big problem with that. However, Sean tweeted out a harsh critique of GoFundMe because he wanted people to help another guy. Do you remember the bodega guy in New York that stabbed the dude that went behind the counter? Yeah, Sean wanted to. He was desperately trying on Twitter to get people to get GoFundMe to reinstate this guy's account for his bail fund. And sometimes people, laymen especially, fall into this trap where I remember, I don't remember if it was Valkyrie or it was some other streamer. Somebody said, I think that criminal defense attorneys are usually scumbags because why would you defend somebody that you know is guilty of a crime? And people fall into this trap of thinking that, well, we can do the analysis of whether or not a person is guilty or not before the court has decided. So when they look at the Trump stuff, they'll say, well, okay, well, obviously these are official acts. You go, well, what about this? And they go, well, obviously that wouldn't be an official act because it's illegal. Hold on. How do you know it would be against the law breaking law without a court to review it? Yeah, but they just assume ahead of time. Yeah. Like, would you ever defend a guy who, if he was guilty of, child rape? And it's like, well, I don't know if he's guilty yet. Well, you don't know if he's guilty yet. He hasn't gone to court. Well, how could you even say that? Yeah. You're like prejudging it in your mind. And then assuming past that point, if it can go to the actual judgment. And that drives me insane.
Trump did it too the other day. Trump said, he was asked, would you pardon all the people convicted of attacking police? And he goes, yes, I would. He's like, wait, you're going to do that? And he's like, oh, I would do it if they were innocent or something like that.
What does that even mean?
Or treated unfairly or something. And it's kind of begging the question. We have the system in place to determine who is and who's not guilty. Sometimes they make mistakes, but you cannot, part of your analysis about whether or not it's immunized cannot be whether it's lawful or unlawful according to the statutes of Congress.
Yeah, because this is all of this stuff is interlocutory or whatever, right? Like you can dismiss a whole case before you even get it to anything. Yeah.
Immunity is, if it were the case that the immunity only applied to legal things that the president could do, then the immunity is literally useless, and you have to have a trial to figure out what's immune and what's not. And by having the trial, if you find that what the person did is illegal and he doesn't have immunity, it just all grounds down into the question of is he guilty or not guilty, and all of a sudden the immunity means nothing.
Yeah.
That's the point. And then the final thing on AJW is his butchering of the
which thing?
Yeah. Well, first of all, do you have any thoughts on AJW right now, away from the Twitter space?
One thing that I'm like getting more and more into or away from, I guess, is not entertaining, just absurdity. That whole conversation is just wacky. The idea that like they didn't know what that conversation was. For AJW in particular, I don't know if he either didn't go to school for the criminal law stuff or if he is just an actual like bad faith demon. There were so many points of that conversation where I'm just like, there's no way that a reasonable person who's educated at all, or has even thought about these issues, is like the idea of like a DA running on prosecuting a guy with an active like what? You wouldn't want somebody to run on that? What do you mean? It's the fucking DA. You don't think a DA would run on prosecuting like an ongoing huge fucking investigation? Now, the reason why he had to own that position at the end is because he had misstated everything that Braggs had said beforehand. So, of course, by the end, he still has to own the shitty conclusion. There was that. There was another small exchange we got into during the debate that I also thought was, I hate a lot of these things now because, especially now that I've looked at the system more, there are some things that are so fucking wrong and unacceptable. But if you don't have like at least a little bit of background, you can't see it. AJW had he said something in the debate about how when Obama went to the OLC, he killed somebody. And then I said, well, Obama going to the OLC shows that, you know, maybe he thinks that he needs to double check this. And then he said, well, that was just Obama's lawyers. And I'm like, yeah, the OLC, that's not that's not Barack Obama's lawyers. This is counsel to the president. But I think that
it's even different. It's even worse. OLC isn't even a White House counsel. It's true. Lawyers of everybody. It's like the government's law firm.
Yeah, because it's not because I think the president's personal counsel would be part of the office of the executive in the White House. Like it would be different. Yeah.
Exactly.
And him making that comparison that like, oh well, the OLC lawyers, that's basically like the same thing as like Giuliani and Powell. And I don't think people realize like immediately how different these two groups of people are, right? That like Giuliani and Powell are just personal lawyers of Donald Trump. They have nothing to do with government, nothing to do with the White House. And I also think it's important because this is an argument I get into a lot when it comes to labor unions. People ask me like, are unions good? Unions just exist to protect, the employee. That's it. They could be good. They could be bad, right? The Office of Legal Counsel should be, my understanding is that should be to represent the interest of the executive branch insofar as it's comporting with the laws of Congress, and then it would pass anything judicially that would be reviewed by the court. The personal lawyer you have is just a guy he's just serving your interests. His goal there is to help you as much as possible, right? So
he has a relationship with you.
Yeah, the OLC should have, that's like, it's representing a part of the government that is hopefully keeping the interests
America.
of... Yes, yeah, in a way, at least the executive branch, yes. Donald Trump's lawyers aren't trying to help the government or the executive branch or even the president or the White House. They're just trying to help Donald Trump. These are so different. And it seems like a minor thing, but when AJW suggested that the OLC are just Obama's lawyers, man, that triggered the fuck out of me that he would even suggest that. It's so not comparable. Ugh.
It's a very Trumpian thing to think of the Justice Department as
your own personal,
where they are officers of the United States and they have an allegiance to the United States and to the Constitution, not to any one person as their lawyer.
Yeah.
There's one line that I think, whenever you're given the Obama example, obviously you should fight on its differences in terms of what Obama did and all that stuff. But the natural and obvious kind of like logical consequence of what they're saying is absurd. And I'll tell you why.
Okay.
The line I use for this is Obama wasn't criminally immune for attacking this guy who had like allegiance to Al-Qaeda and who was engaging in war against the United States. He wasn't immune for that action.
Yeah.
He was justified. And any way that like a cop shooting a fleeing person who's like a murderer or something is justified in taking that shot. And just like Abraham Lincoln was justified in ordering the death of other Americans. That's what he did, right? Abraham Lincoln, when he was the commander in chief during the Civil War, he was ordering American soldiers to kill other American citizens. They never recognized like that these were foreign citizens. These were still American civilians in revolt, and he was putting down insurrection. And as part of that, he literally ordered the death of individuals.
Yeah,
he wasn't immune for ordering the death of those individuals, but he was justified in that he was engaging in war against an insurrection. This is what AJW wants you to believe. That if let's imagine that Mitt Romney in 2012 were on like a mission to Yemen. He goes to Yemen to try to like make peace in Yemen or something, or make peace with Al-Qaeda. And Obama orders a drone strike on Mitt Romney, who is not engaging in a war against the United States, who was literally on a peace mission, and says, deleted, you die. Kills him. And you know, remember, same fact pattern. He's an American citizen outside of the country, and he uses a drone strike to kill him. Would Obama be immune for that action? And what would you say, Stephen, if you were the other side trying to defend this? Would you say he is or isn't?
If I was the other side?
You say he isn't.
Right? Yeah, if I was the other side, I would say he isn't immune for that. Of course not, yeah.
Right, and I would say, why? And you would say?
Well, because he did something, he just murdered a guy for personal gain or something.
Yeah, but how do you determine whether or not it was for personal gain?
Because I look and I can see it because it's on Trump media.
Yeah.
So there's no way there's no good way to answer that. Yeah, because in their mind, it's the exact same thing. Personal assassination and Obama. I also think that there's like it's a mens rea question, but again, if Obama thought he was criminally immune, why the fuck did he even go to the OLC? What the fuck is the point? You just order the hit. Who cares? Like, it's not illegal, right? Why would you even care? Why the fuck even waste money on the OLC if they can just do whatever the fuck they want? What's the point?
I think that's a good kind of mens rea justification argument, though we wouldn't extend it to Trump when he tried to like seek legal advice for things that were clearly illegal, right?
We absolutely would extend it to Trump, and it's a really strong mens rea argument because when Trump went to other people, they told him it was illegal. So then he found other people, right? I would say I think Obama would be a war criminal. If Obama went to the OLC and they said, this strike, probably no good. I don't think so. And instead Obama went and found his own personal lawyers and they wrote a memo saying, yeah, I would say, what the fuck? I would say that's unhinged. That's insane. Yeah.
But he would be bound by whatever his initial lawyer said, or sorry, not his lawyers, but the OLC said, or the DOJ said.
I mean, you can't find lawyers to help you commit crimes, right? This is one of the few times the crime fraud exception or whatever, right? Where you can pierce the attorney-client privilege. If I go around to I think you can even use that as a mens rea, as an intent argument. That if I go around at 15 lawyers and then the 16th one gives me like a good argument for how I can break a law and do some crazy illegal shit or whatever, I don't think that you're allowed to do that, right?
Yeah, I mean, I agree. I think that just because you hoodwink a lawyer or you bring a lawyer into it, I don't think that makes it legal all of a sudden. The only thing I'm trying to say is, if you take the Obama argument to its logical extension, then what you're saying, what AJW is saying, is that anyone the president kills abroad on purpose that is immunized conduct.
Yeah.
And that even if it were in bad faith, because remember, that's the accusations of Trump, is that everything he did was in bad faith.
Yeah.
It was all illegal. It doesn't matter.
Yeah.
If he's exercising, and if he writes a memo that just says, Mitt Romney is a secret Yemeni assassin, and this isn't actually the real Mitt Romney. We have the real Mitt Romney in a bunker somewhere. This is a fake Mitt Romney. And he's like, oh, I was just wrong about that. How could you ever go after Obama killing any random person? The reason why you know that he isn't immunized from that conduct and Obama wasn't immunized from his killing of an American citizen is because in those situations, you would just have a trial. You would just indict Obama. But of course,
yeah. But then they're doing the thing. Yeah, you hit on the thing I said earlier where people are like prejudging it and then acting like they can have a judgment after they prejudge it. We're like, well, that would be illegal because what Obama would do is obviously wrong. It's like, well, how do you know it's wrong without having a trial first? Yeah.
Here's my case for why AJW maybe wasn't lying.
Okay.
Because I've heard him say just crazily wrong things before.
Sure. Lying about what? What are we talking in particular here?
So, about the Bragg thing.
Okay.
I think there's a good chance he was lying, but he might not have been if he's really just that brazenly stupid and confident. Because I've heard him say incredibly wrong things about like what the Pennsylvania Supreme Court has said about Act 77 that was extending mail-in voting.
He did this to me in a debate as well. Like here's why I think he's lying. You can tell me why it's not true. Is because anytime somebody has enough of a fact, but they don't have the rest of it, I'm thinking, okay, you looked this up and you did some research to have this, but you're not providing the context that I would need. This is like, it's like a Brady violation in a debate, right? Yeah. You were doing research and you found a fact that probably would have exonerated me, or at least this particular thing, but you decided not to bring that up and you only present the evidence that's favorable to you, right? This is insane. And the fact that he knows so many little random things where it's like, yeah, you're talking about like the Ulysses S. Grant election or whatever, where like, you know, there were states that were still occupied in the South and there were legitimate questions about democracy and everything. And you're trying to bring this up as though like, well, in 1876, you know, there was, it's like, wait, what? Yeah. And I've seen this in display in real time. You saw my debate with Greenwald. He tried to pass off that Hawaii's elector thing, and I asked him, I was like, wait a second, why did they even do that? And he knew the full answer. And I was like, wait, you knew this the whole time? Did you just present this on the hope that I wouldn't ask? When me and AJW had a debate about drawing down troops in Afghanistan, AJW, he basically quoted an article, and then I ended up looking at my phone, but he left out the part where it said that it was all maintenance people. It wasn't actually active troops that were brought in as like private people. So yeah, I feel like he selectively quotes stuff. And then I'm also really irritated, sorry, last point, that, and it seems like it happens a lot with conservatives. This is why I don't even like listening to videos of them now if I haven't read up completely on the issue. Not only do they present stuff incorrectly, sometimes when I look, it's like the exact opposite of what they're saying. Yeah. And I've never actually dug into the Bragg stuff before, but now looking at Bragg's statements, not only one, do they seem like they were pretty responsible in everything that I saw, 2, there were already ongoing investigations. And 3, when he cites those prosecutors that dropped from the case, the implication was that they dropped because they thought that Braggs was acting improperly in his investigation. But then when I read an article about it, it seems like they dropped because they thought that Bragg should have been more aggressive. Because Braggs was like, I don't think we can go to a grand jury with this. We don't have enough. Right. And then they left because they were like, oh, I think this is blah, blah. That's the exact opposite of what
liberals were pissed when the prosecutors came out. They were so mad at Bragg. They wanted to like, you piece of shit.
Yeah, so what the fuck? Yeah, so that's why go ahead.
Yeah. I guess the question, it's not up to you whether or not you think that it's a pattern of lying or just him being a boomer online and just believing all the, I don't know, the tweets he sees or the narrative he sees. Mm-hmm. I probably would lean more on the he's being deceptive side, but I'm just giving you it could be that he's just always wrong and interpreting things in the most ridiculous way. Kind of like the Rob situation where I don't know that Rob is lying. I just think his interpretations of things are insane. Although I think he maybe did lie about the AI thing. I don't know that he's lying whenever he says he has his kind of crazy interpretation of like various conspiracies or things like that. Mm-hmm. That's all I got for you. Hope you had a good weekend.
Always.
You doing okay?
Yeah, I think so. Streaming, reading, having fun. Okay.
All right, man.
Wait, final question, random thing. Did you know that there was a pardon list?
What do you mean?
I've forgotten that there was Eastman had emailed Giuliani about being on the pardon list. That email, actually, I was thinking about it and I changed my mind. I think I actually would like to be on that pardon list if you guys are still collecting names for that. That's what the fuck? Yeah. Okay.
Oh, it's all a bit of a meme.
Also, you agree with me that it's really inappropriate how much Trump mixes like the personal stuff with the White House stuff, right?
Of course.
Like it's irritating because I think it mindfucks personal. Like I think it mindfucks citizens too. My wonderful kick mod, she says, "Wow, so Trump used personal lawyers and was acting as a private citizen when he called Raffensperger and didn't use the weight of the DOJ behind him in a lot of those election cases. So interesting, noted." Like the DOJ didn't do any of those election cases. It was all Trump's personal lawyers. I don't know if they know that, right? The DOJ didn't do a single election fraud case in trial, did they?
No, they didn't.
No, they didn't because they didn't find any evidence of anything. Yeah, all of those were personal Trump lawyer cases. It was a private citizen's cases. That's it. All of them were. But yeah.
Is that your mod like being sarcastic with you?
No, it's Puggy Gups. We love her, but she's very conservative.
But it sounds like she's saying that, therefore, what Trump did isn't that bad.
Exactly. Yes, that's what I'm saying. Like, yeah, people believe this.
Well, I don't even know that we would disagree with that. If Trump were on the call with, now Trump alludes to the DOJ in a kind of on that call. If you recall, he's like,
he does.
That's dangerous for you. He's
yeah,
like, that's
as a threat, as like a mob boss guy. Yeah.
I don't even think that you or I would like disagree that if a U.S. attorney were on the call, it would be even worse. Here's the question. If a U.S. attorney were on the phone, what would you guys, the Trumpers, the conservative people, how would that affect your outlook? If you literally had a DOJ person like, hey, who's the guy from The Simpsons? Fuck. Johnny no lips, no squealer. I don't know.
I don't
like
ever watch
some
The
enforcer
Simpsons,
behind you. Like, how would that change your outlook on that phone call? What would it take for you to be like, okay, this call, clearly he was trying to swing dick or exercise some muscle. So ask that of yourselves. Anyway,
Okay.
much love.
Love you. Be careful, buddy.
Continue on your journey. Be careful.
Bye. Fucking loser. Was the schizo email I sent you yesterday about Trump's possible third term part of what made you ask Pisco? Oh, yeah. Were you the one that sent me that email? Yeah, true. The president shall not be? What does that mean? Ugh, whatever.